I was 6 when I entered it. And it won the state contest. So, I mean, from the art perspective, I basically had a career at 6. I was traveling the whole country, giving speeches and presentations, and it was a lot. So anyway, I came to my dad with this, asked him if I could build an aviary. He's like, if you buy all this stuff, I'll help you build it. Once farmers started to hear about it is when they started calling me, because they knew I had this aviary, and I always had to tell them I couldn't, because you can't take wild duck eggs. They did for me, it's a special purpose miscellaneous permit for waterfowl with like a subsection for egg salvage. I think hunters, being the ones out there seeing all this firsthand, they care about wildlife, they care about the birds, and I think they're some of the best conservationists there are.
Spending time outdoors isn't about escaping life. It's about remembering where we fit. Here, we honor the traditions that shape us, revere the life around us, care for the land beneath us, and connect to the world and the people around us. Because at the end of the day, we're all standing on the same ground. This is the ground between us.
Alrighty, hi y'all. Welcome to The Ground Between Us, the podcast where nature connects us all. My guest today is Madison Grimm from Second Chance Flight. How are you today, Madison?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, Madison, you won the Youth Duck Stamp competition twice, correct?
3 times.
3 times, and she is also one of only 2 people permitted to salvage waterfowl, salvage and rehabilitate, that's what I was looking for. Salvage and rehabilitate waterfowl eggs, and she's only 19 years old. So pretty cool stuff. But before we get into any of that, I just have a few questions here to kind of break the ice and let our audience get to know you better. So what is your favorite species of waterfowl to paint?
I haven't even actually painted all the species yet, but I would say maybe pintail at the moment. They're just so fun to paint, all the intricate designs and detail.
That's really cool. What's your favorite species to hunt?
I don't know. We have some pretty cool late season diving duck hunts, like canvasbacks and redheads and stuff. But of course they don't taste as good. So It's a toss up between those and the better tasting species.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, that brings me to my next question. What is your favorite species to eat?
Probably one of the teal or wood ducks. Those are both pretty great.
Yeah, I've heard. I don't waterfowl myself. That's something I would like to get into, but waterfowlers are very secretive. I've found that out. It's very, very difficult to figure out who is hunting and how I can join. But I've definitely heard
everyone's protective of their favorite spots a little bit.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that the divers, or the teal and the mallards taste better than the divers.
Definitely.
What is your favorite species of non-game bird?
I don't know. I love the little warblers when they migrate back in the spring. Those might be one of my favorites.
Yeah, those are really cool.
All the different species and their calls and everything. It's pretty cool to watch.
What is your favorite non-bird related thing to do?
Non-bird related. I love stuff with other animals. Like I have a dog and I love dog training and that kind of thing. Really anything outside is kind of my favorite. So hunting, fishing, that kind of thing.
I appreciate that. What is your favorite piece of public land you've ever visited?
Some of the national refuges are really cool and some of the parks and stuff. I think we've been to Badlands National Park and Yellowstone, and some of those are just super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd really like to make it out to the Badlands. They're
it's just so different from anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, they're opening sorry, I don't know if you can hear Leo stomping upstairs. They're opening the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library this year, and it's right next to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and that's sort of out. It's not in the Badlands, but it's sort of that same territory. I think that would be really cool to go to. But yeah, so kind of just tell us. It sounds like you grew up in an outdoor family that waterfowl was always a big part of your life through that way. So how did you become involved in this rehabilitation stuff to begin with?
I think it all kind of started with my dad, obviously. So he's a 3-time winner of the federal duck stamp contest, which is, there's only a small group of people that have ever won it that many times. And I remember kind of my earliest memory probably is sitting and watching him in his studio painting. And I always just thought it was so cool how he could take just a blank board and make this scene on it, make the birds come to life. And so I would spend hours just watching him paint. And then when I was about 5 years old, I remember vaguely remember, but I remember asking my mom and dad if I could do a painting like Daddy does, is what I said. And Dad was like oh, that's kind of cool because they never really pushed like the art thing, even from a young age. So it was kind of like exciting for him, I think, to have like me show an interest in it that much. But he told me about the federal junior duck stamp contest, and I was almost eligible to enter it. So it's K through 12. And he kind of told me, if I wanted to do an entry, he would kind of help instruct me and teach me about art. And so I wanted to do it. And I mean, it took a long time because I was 5. But I started this entry. I think I started it maybe 3 different times. I kept screwing it up. I have very high standards already because I wanted to be like how Dad's was. And obviously, physically, I just couldn't get it there. So I think that was kind of like annoying to me. Like I was a little bit defeated. But yeah, I finished this entry. It took about a year on and off just because, I mean, my attention span wasn't super long. Took a lot of patience, and they were oil paints, which are a slow medium to work with. And so I finally finished this painting. I was 6 when I entered it, and it won the state contest. So all of the junior duck stamp entries have to win their respective state contests in order to go on to the national contest. So only one entry from each state goes on. And so I won the whole the whole state contest essentially for South Dakota. And that was like kind of a big deal because it's through high school. So I'd beat all these other entries at just 6 years old. So I was super excited about that. I remember we went out to dinner and stuff. It was super fun. But yeah, then we were like, oh, it'll go on to the national contest now. So obviously I don't think my parents were really expecting a whole lot from the national contest because that's the best from the whole country, essentially. And anyway, so we weren't even watching it. They used to live stream it at the time. But a friend of ours ended up calling my dad, and she was like, "Are you guys watching the contest? You should turn it on." And he's like, "No, why?" And so we got it on eventually. She said Madison was doing really well. She's in the top like 10 or whatever it was at the time. So we had like super slow dial-up internet at our old house. Took forever to get up. But when we finally got it on, they had just finished and they were gonna start announcing the winners. And they started with 3rd place, 2nd place, and so on. And then for the 1st place, they announced my painting. And my mom and dad's faces were priceless. It was so funny. They were like, "What?" So that was pretty cool. I still remember that. I think that's one of my like core memories a little bit. But that was what really just launched everything. So, I mean, from the art perspective, I basically had a career at 6. I was traveling the whole country, giving speeches and presentations, and it was a lot. I was doing remarks and commission drawings, all sorts of things. But yeah, that definitely really launched me into the art and wildlife world. I've just grown up in it.
Yeah, sorry, we should just back up for a second for our listeners who might not be aware. So the duck stamp is essentially because waterfowl are migrating birds and they migrate across state borders and oftentimes national borders. You can't just buy a state hunting license and then go hunt migratory birds because they span these borders. You have to buy a separate stamp, and that goes to conserving them at a national level. Historically, it was an actual stamp, and they hold contests for artwork to be on, like, the stamp, the postage stamp. Now, of course, with the internet and things, you can just buy your license online, but they still, I think, oftentimes send the stamp, and it's just a ceremonial thing. So that is why the contest is such a big deal, because there people all over the country are buying the stamp, and it's become a really cool honorary thing. So how did that actually then transfer into, like, it sounds like you started an aviary and that's how you got into the egg salvage permit. So, like, when did you start actually doing hands-on things with birds?
Yeah, so after the first win, when I was 6, obviously, I was pretty young. I ended up, just because I got a little bit burnt out from all the art stuff, I took a break for probably like almost 6 years, kind of from art. I just didn't even really do it much, and which was kind of sad. I probably should have done that, but I just got so distracted with other stuff, being a kid, all that. So when I was about 12, I decided I really wanted to try and do another entry. And so I did this painting, won the state of South Dakota contest again, and then ended up winning the national contest again. So that was super neat because I'd only entered it 2 times at that point. But the year was 2020, so probably the worst year I ever could have won the junior duck stamp contest. I think a lot of people didn't even hear about it because just everything was shut down. So there was no traveling, no anything. And so with the prize money, I asked my dad if I could build an aviary because I'd always really wanted one. I had met this friend in Wisconsin who has a huge aviary. She has like 8 aviaries. And she had told me all about them. I just thought it was so neat. So anyway, I came to my dad with this, asked him if I could build an aviary, kind of not expecting him to go for that. It's a lot of work. He was kind of excited by the idea. He's like, if you buy all this stuff, I'll help you build it. So I took the prize money from that part of it and built this aviary that year. So that really kind of got that started. I ended up going to my friend in Wisconsin's house, bought a bunch of ducklings from her. We traveled all the way back with them in the car. It was pretty funny. But yeah, it kind of grew from there. I think I started with like 20 ducklings and then they kept having babies and I bought new ones. It gets really addictive. So I always tell my parents there's worse things I could be addicted to. Buying ducks is not a bad one. So yeah, that was what really kind of got that started. I love keeping the ducks. It's so much fun. They have little personalities and little quirks. So neat. And yeah, so I kind of just did that and then yeah, once farmers started to hear about it is when they started calling me because they knew I had this aviary, one of the few people in the state that even has one. So it was kind of a cool thing for all the local people to come see. And they knew I had incubators and was hatching the ducklings. So I think like the following spring, I got probably like a dozen phone calls from different farmers we know around saying, "Hey, I hit this nest when I was haying my field. Would you want to take these eggs? There's still some what am I looking for? Salvageable eggs in this nest." And I always had to tell them I couldn't because you can't take wild duck eggs. I mean, mine are all papered, licensed, and everything. So, yeah, it was pretty sad of him telling me I couldn't take them, even when the eggs were, like, really close to hatching. Like, the one nest was a nest of pintails. And the guy called, he's like, "I just hit the hen. There's all these little pintail eggs." And he said, "I can hear them peeping. They're, like, super close to hatching, probably a few hours from hatching." And he said, "They're not going to make it in this field." He said, "The disker's coming right behind me. They're going to till all this ground." And, yeah, I just couldn't take them. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, maybe if you wanted to take them, but I'm like, it's illegal. Like, So, yeah, that was what really kind of got me thinking there's got to be some kind of solution to this problem. Like, it's obviously happening a lot around here. This is one of the biggest important nesting areas in the country for waterfowl. And so I started kind of looking into permits, licenses. It was a lot of work. It took I think a couple years of planning, just trying to figure out what I'd even have to do, talking to people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so you're in Northeast South Dakota, right?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a bit of a tangent, but there's a different podcast that's big in like the fitness space called Massonomics. They're in Aberdeen, and they always say they're from Western Northeast South Dakota, which I think is very funny.
Yeah.
So you go to Fish and Wildlife and say, "Hey, I have this problem," and they say what to you?
Well, I think the first time I called the regional office, they didn't really have any idea who I was. They were just like, "This is just some random girl calling us with like this just complete out of the blue problem." They're like, "We don't even have a license for this, Like, I don't think there's any way to even do something like that." And I think they were really pushing hard to discourage me from it because it would be work for them and they didn't really know what to do. And then also all the work on my side of it. I don't think they really thought I was that serious about it. So the first phone call was kind of depressing. I'm like, well, I don't think this is going to even work. I don't know. But I ended up finding there's in California, the only other egg salvage program in the country is through the California Waterfowl Association. And they started theirs a while, like probably at least 20 years ago, maybe. And it's been really successful and ended up being able to get a hold of their egg salvage coordinator and had a number of phone calls with him. He thought it was a great idea. He was super supportive and helped me kind of figure out the permit and licensing stuff. So he was able to tell me what they had for it. And so I kind of gathered all that information and then went back to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with it and told them, I'm really serious about trying to do something like this. I said, this is pretty much exactly what I want to start, is what this program already has. And I showed them what permits they had gotten from their regional office years ago. And yeah, a number more phone calls, but I think they kind of realized, like, she's really serious about this. And I had told them about the art thing. Like, I've been involved for a long time with waterfowl. So yeah, I think my dad had even had a few conversations with them. So we had like a joint video call meeting and all sorts of stuff. It was a lot of work. But yeah, we ended up being able to, they did for me, it's a special purpose miscellaneous permit for waterfowl with like a subsection for egg salvage. So that covers all of the eggs essentially that I'm taking in. And then I also have a waterfowl rehabilitation permit, a special purpose permit. So that kind of covers, raising the ducklings once they hatch and then releasing them. So it's like a joint permit. And It was kind of like unique how I had to do it because no one's really done it before. But yeah, I got that. I got it all filled out, sent in. I think it took like 6 months to even get finished. So it was a lot of work. But
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah.
That's crazy because, like, as you said before, like that the Prairie Pothole region is such an important nesting site for that no one even had took the idea far enough to that a permit existed for it before. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I was shocked it isn't really a thing, but I think farmers are really the only ones even encountering it. They're the only ones that know it's a problem because they're really the only ones seeing it happen firsthand. And I don't think many of them could really do much about it. Actually, a number of the ones I've talked to, almost all of them actually, have said that they've already done this for years. They would just pick up the eggs, stick them under a broody chicken hen, let her hatch and raise them because they feel so bad about it. But it's not legal. So, and a lot of them don't really know how to raise some of these ducklings. Some of them are kind of tricky, and so yeah, having someone permitted, I think, around that knows what they're doing, has the time and space to do it. A lot of them have been really excited about it. I don't think I've talked to any farmers that were not supportive of it. So yeah, it was really kind of their idea that what they came to me with it. So yeah, it's not like I'm going like dissing farmers or anything. I mean, we all love farmers. We love what they produce, and of course, it's a necessary career.
So a farmer calls you and you go out to their farm. Like, take me through what it's like when you go and rescue a nest that maybe they found in a field.
So if a farmer hits a nest, yeah, usually, I mean, I've been trying really hard to push my phone number. I do radio ads, magnets, all that kind of thing. But they can find my number a number of different ways. So they'll call me, and then depending on where they are, I have a handful of local volunteers that have volunteered to go get eggs if they're like kind of outside of the radius I can really get to. But either I or a volunteer will go pick up the eggs from the farmer. A lot of the time they'll stop and pick them up and put them in like an egg carton or something in their cab so they can keep working. Because if you leave them, the gulls will eat them very fast. They're vicious. A lot of the time they'll even kill the hen, any ducklings, really anything in the field. So they've got to pick them up right away. Yeah, and then a lot of the time they'll just stop and meet us, or we'll even drive right out there and grab them from them. And then yeah, I'll bring them back, candle them, check for any little cracks. A lot of the time there's little hairline cracks from being hit by this mower. And sometimes they're destroyed beyond repair, which is kind of sad, but it happens. So if it's not actively leaking out of the crack, like if it hasn't broken through the membrane, I can patch it with a natural nail polish. And I've experimented with a ton of different ways of patching these eggs, but nail polish works the best. So I'll patch any cracks, blow dry them real gently to get the nail polish to dry, and then put them in my incubator. And I usually mark them with like an estimated hatch date. So if I candle them, it's like using a flashlight. But you shine it through the egg, and then you can see how far along they are in development. And I've done it so much, I've gotten pretty good at guessing almost exactly how far along they are. So I can mark about exactly when they'll hatch, and then, yeah, they just stay in this incubator, turning back and forth. It has an egg turner until 3 days before they're supposed to hatch. And then I'll move them to this hatching incubator I have. And that one holds higher humidity and does not turn the eggs. So they can just hatch in there kind of without any disruptions.
So the egg patching thing, is that like was that something you had to figure out on your own, or I'd imagine that's something that people have
Yeah.
been doing for you?
I mean, everyone has eggs get cracked, even chicken eggs and that kind of thing. But a lot of people use wax, which I've tried, and I just don't like messing with wax. It's hot and it gets all over everything. A lot of the time is way too clumpy on the egg for them to even hatch. So the nail polish is much more precise. Regular nail polish, the chemicals and stuff in it can screw up with the embryo if they get absorbed through the pores. So natural is really better for that. But yeah, I've got this brand I really like. Works super well. I've never lost a cracked egg that I patched with nail polish. I've lost them with wax and that kind of thing. So it's got a
Yeah,
pretty good track record. I keep quite a few bottles on hand. Sometimes my sister will be like, "Can I use your nail polish?" I'm like, "No, it's for the eggs." So,
yeah, that's really cool. So why? I know why, but for our audience, so why is turning the eggs while they're incubating important?
So a hen will generally turn the eggs in her nest back and forth, sometimes up to 100 times a day. So that's essentially just to keep the embryo, especially when they're really young, like in the first week and a half, from sticking to the shell. Because if they stick to the eggshell, the veins don't distribute correctly and they'll adhere to it and then just die, usually within a couple of days. So I have them turn, I think it's every half hour in this incubator. The tray they're in tips back and forth. And that just keeps them from sticking, helps the veins to distribute evenly, that kind of thing.
And once they're hatched, so is raising like a wild species of duck roughly the same as raising a domestic species, or is there any like challenges that come with raising those ones?
Well, raising mallards, most of the teal, those are all similar. I mean, besides the fact that I try not to imprint them, so I try and keep them fairly wild, don't handle them much. But wood ducks, hooded mergansers, those are a lot trickier. Sometimes the teal, just because they're so tiny, like green-winged teal, which I've gotten occasionally. Those are just so tiny. They're hard to even get eating. You got to crush the food up really tiny and everything. But I mean, they're not that difficult. I've had the aviary for like 6 years now, so I have quite a bit of experience raising them from that. And once they get past a few weeks old, then you're generally pretty safe with them. Wood ducks and hooded mergansers are really the hardest. They have to have kind of a different diet, so I feed those Missouri waterfowl starter, is what it is. And it's hard to get them eating for the first few days. Sometimes I'll give like live mealworms to encourage them to pick at stuff. Sometimes you even have to let them jump off of something because I mean, I don't really know. I've heard the studies and stuff on it. It supposedly kickstarts their like neurological system, apparently. Like they have to fall for some reason, which sounds really bad. You'd think it'd be better to avoid that. But yeah, I actually had to do it with a group. They just would not start eating. So I put them in a cardboard box, and my dad actually held it up outside, kind of as high as he could. And I called them out of it. They all jumped out of it, and immediately they started picking at stuff on the ground right there. And I was like, what is wrong with you guys? Come on. But yeah, that seemed to solve the issue. They all started eating after that. I don't know. I don't know what it does, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything like that. I don't
Yeah.
even understand how in the wild like that scenario would occur that these little ducklings would fall like that.
Well, I mean, they're naturally cavity nesters, so they'll nest like way
No.
up in holes and trees and stuff. And I've had tons where I don't have to do it. They just start eating on their own. Totally fine. But yeah, sometimes there's the odd group that for whatever reason needs a little push, literally.
Yeah. So you mentioned imprinting before, and I remember in college we learned about all kind like, when they Head Start California condors, the keepers like wear these crazy costumes so they look
Yeah.
like condors. They don't. So
Yeah.
how do you avoid imprinting, and do you like have problems with that or?
For waterfowl, it's not really a big deal. They just have such strong, wild, natural instincts that even if they did imprint to you, it's not going to affect them once you release them at all. I'll do it on purpose with my aviary birds just because it makes it easier to handle them. So, like, twice a year, I give them dewormer, have to catch them all. I imprinted all of them, and it really doesn't help. They're still pretty crazy in there. So, it's not a big deal, but yeah, I haven't done it on purpose with any of the rescued ducklings. Kind of if you just avoid human contact for the first few days, once they're past the imprinting period, they're generally fine. They'll kind of imprint on each other, and that's better because then it's to other ducks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and yeah, just for anyone who might not be aware, imprinting is like this sort of there's two kinds of imprinting when particularly a bird is born. There's like the first thing they see is what they think is like their parent, or they think that the first thing that they ever see is the thing that they're supposed to mate with. And there's some if you look into falconry, there's some really crazy stuff related to that second kind of imprinting. But you want to avoid that first kind to make sure that they're not like prone to human conflict or like bothering people or not
Yeah.
going with their flock because they're interested in people all the time and stuff like that. So that is something
Yeah,
that
any
you
of the
have.
more intelligent birds are definitely more susceptible to it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any challenges when it comes to releasing them? Like how do you handle that end of things?
Um, well, I generally release them between 6 to 8 weeks old, depending on the species. I'll try and wait until we have a good stretch following the day I'm going to release them that's like sunny, that kind of thing, not inclement weather. Just because it kind of helps them, I feel like, adapt to being in the wild a little bit better. But I'll do groups of maybe like 10 to 20. Sometimes I'll do a bigger group if I have extra ducklings. But I feel like the smaller groups is kind of better because then you can kind of spread them around. I think I released maybe on like 8 different wetlands last year. And that way I just feel like it kind of spreads them out enough that if something were to happen, maybe let's say like a hawk finds these ones on this wetland and ends up picking off a few. And that way the other ones aren't like just all, susceptible to that. So I'll spread them around a little bit. I'll wait until like maybe I'll have a couple groups that are ready to go and then go release both of those. But I try and pick small wetlands that have like a lot of duckweed, good cover around the edge, cattail cover, maybe shallower ones just because they tend to have more a food source in them. But they also have to be private wetlands. because of my federal permit. It's supposed to only be private ground for some reason, which I guess is probably better. I mean, then they're not necessarily going to be hunted as soon as early duck season opens here. I don't know. It's pretty cool to actually release them, though. Kind of see them go off on their way. Sometimes they'll like fly a little bit and splash around. They're always so excited.
You don't ban any of them, do you?
Not yet. I've been trying really hard to get licensed to do that. So it's all through the USGS. So it's not U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But yeah, I've had several conversations with them and other banders and stuff around. And yeah, hopefully really soon. So
yeah, I mean, it seems like there would be interesting data to gather from that, seeing as how you're only one of 2 programs to do that, to like the long-term effects of how the salvaging impacts them and their survival.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we've been going back and forth about you being on here for a few weeks, and at one point you were in the state capitol trying to, what was going on there that you were trying to lobby for? I get, well, maybe lobby's not the right word, fight for, whatever.
Yeah, it's been kind of a busy year already with that. But so last year I got licensed for the ducks, and then I went to the state because I wanted to also get licensed to take in pheasants and other upland game birds, like pheasants, turkeys, and potentially grouse were the 3 main ones I was looking at, just because they also nest here in really high numbers and in hay fields. So I knew I was going to be getting some uncomfortable encounters where farmers would pick up duck eggs, they think, and call me, and I'd show up to get them in their pheasant eggs, and then I couldn't take those since I didn't have a permit at the time. So I really wanted to just avoid that scenario. I wanted to get licensed through the state to do that, and because they're obviously not migratory, that's all state managed. So I went to our state game fish and parks, and I had a number of different conversations with a number of different people, and no one really seemed to know what I would need to do for it, being that they're like eggs. So like one time it would sound really easy, like, oh, you just need this permit, but then they're like, well, they're eggs, so they're actually in conflict with the state statute. And yeah, so our state statute was essentially prohibits anyone from touching, taking, salvaging, breaking any kind of bird eggs, no matter what they are. So that was kind of a conflict, because I get why they wrote the law, because you don't just want anybody just going out and picking up eggs or breaking them or whatever. But it would essentially make my permit in conflict, and then also getting licensed to take any kind of game birds. So I ended up talking to the head of our game fish and parks, and he suggested that I would actually have to get this law amended or changed somehow. So yeah, I was like, well, that's going to be a big task. So it ended up not working to do it in time for last year because session was already over. But I did get a handful of calls for pheasant eggs and had to turn them away, which was unfortunate. But yeah, this year we really pushed for it. We're like, we really need to get this in time for this spring. So we ended up meeting with our state representative, our local representative here, and he said he would be willing to help draft the bill and present it on our behalf. So we actually worked with the LRC office to draft this bill, and it would essentially change the law to allow anyone with a federal permit to be exempt from this statute, and then it would also create like a permit pathway for game fish and parks to make a permit for me for game birds. So we ended up presenting this in the State House committee. My dad and I drove up there and testified for it and presented it and everything. And yeah, it was a long road, a lot of different driving to Pier. But we ended up it got amended slightly, and it actually just kind of narrows it. Game Fish and Parks brought the amendment, and it was totally fine. It still did everything we wanted it to do. So we accepted that, and then yeah, it went to the Senate committee, and we went and testified for that, and it passed pretty much everything with almost unanimous support. So that was pretty cool. There wasn't really any, I mean, you wouldn't think there'd be any conflict with it, but there's always some because politics. But yeah, so it ended up, we watched some of the hearings on TV, which is kind of fun, but it ended up passing with no problem. And then, yeah, we're just waiting for the governor to sign it kind of now. So I'll be able to take all upland game bird eggs this year, and then the federal permit is clearly exempted under it, so there's no issues there.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's awesome. A lot of people wouldn't even like know how to they would just say, oh, it's against the law, I guess we can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
to actually attack that in that way is
yeah,
really
I was
awesome.
determined to get it fixed. I'm like, this has to be changed. Shouldn't be. Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be a big problem, but Yeah, at least it went through pretty easily. So
Yeah, I don't think people realize like you are just one person, but at the same time, like, and you did the same thing with the fish and wildlife. They're like, well, there's nothing we don't really do anything about this, and you basically said, well, you should start. Let's figure it out. And
yeah,
like,
this is
you
a
know,
problem, you know? So
people kind of write off their impact because they're one person, but like if you just come to people with these things, a lot of times there's a solution to be had. And I think that's a really powerful thing to know.
yeah, yeah, everyone can definitely make a difference, especially if you push hard enough and have enough determination. So
Right, yeah.
yeah.
So one of the things that we were talking about before the episode is that you were saying people are often surprised to hear that you're a hunter because you're also rehabilitating these waterfowl. So can you kind of talk about like that sort of relationship between like on its face it may seem odd that someone that also likes to shoot ducks cares so much about ducks.
Yeah. You know, I was a hunter first. I care a lot about waterfowl. My whole family's been into hunting for a long time. And yeah, I always loved getting up early, going out there, watching the sunrise. It was never really about how many birds we got, but more just kind of about being out in nature, seeing, you know, God's beauty, being with family and friends, that kind of thing. But of course, getting birds was always really fun, especially watching them work the decoys. It's so cool. And we live in an amazing area for it. So that's pretty special. But yeah, I think hunters, I mean, being the ones out there seeing all this firsthand, you know, they care about wildlife, they care about the birds, and I think they're some of the best conservationists there are because they don't want to see this resource die out. They want their grandchildren and great grandchildren to be able to go out in nature and kind of experience the same things they did. So all the hunters I've talked to have been super supportive. You know, you can still love ducks and nature while also loving hunting them.
Yeah, you can like I think a lot of people what a lot of people don't understand is that hunters put like the idea of the animal over on a very high pedestal over like any one individual animal. So
Yeah.
they respect sort of the concept and like the fact that
Hmm.
there are ducks on the landscape a ton, you know, or like in my case deer or whatever, but like
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that they can't harvest any one individual animal. And it's not, you know, like
Yeah.
in most states in the US, I think a lot of people don't realize that like if you shoot an animal, you have to salvage it. Like there are not people that are just I mean there are, but they're criminals that are just going out and shooting
There's
animals.
always the ones that give hunters a bad name, but they speak
Right,
for
yeah.
a very small population of hunters.
Right. Yeah. And there's also the funding that hunting provides. I mean, through license
Mhm.
money and then, you know, Pittman Robertson money and which Pittman Robertson is a tax on firearms and shooting equipment. There's a similar act on like fishing equipment, archery equipment and stuff. That the federal government designates for conservation and they match that money 3 to 1 with license sales. So actually when a hunter buys a hunting license, 4 times what they paid for the hunting license is going towards conservation through that money. Um,
Yeah.
it's a really awesome thing.
Yeah, all the
But
wildlife and bees and yeah.
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 So, what are your plans for the future for Second Chance?
Well, I'm hoping, I guess as far as this year, I'm hoping I can rescue a lot more birds than last year. It should be a better nesting season. Last year was pretty poor for nesting. A lot of the birds ended up just pushing north because it was really dry here when they were coming through. And so we had nowhere near the breeding population that we usually do here. So I'm kind of excited to see if it's a more typical year, just how many I get. Because I was kind of expecting it to be more like in the 1 to 2,000 range, maybe even more than that. So that'll be kind of fun. Obviously, doing the game birds will be really cool, kind of experimenting with that. I'm able to ban the game birds since they're state managed. So I'm actually getting bans for those, and then that'll be kind of neat to see the survival rates on those, even though it's not ducks. It'll still be kind of interesting. So I'm gonna do that, and then yeah, I really would love to get licensed to do the banding for the waterfowl. That's definitely one of my priorities. Besides that, I mean, long term, I would really love to see, you know, depending on the data I collect and everything, I think it'll be really high, the survivability rate. But if it is, I would love to try and start other ones in other areas, maybe more in this state, maybe in other states, and really try and kind of help mitigate some of the loss that there definitely is. It's not really a permanent fix. It's kind of just a band. But I mean, for every bird saved, it's another bird out there in the flyway, nesting, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I kind of, as you were talking, I kind of realized that I wanted to talk about this a little bit too, which is that
Hmm.
The Dirty Birder on YouTube made a documentary about you. It's great. Everybody should go watch it. But in that documentary, he mentioned that like hunters are finding like several nests per field sometimes, right? So, and like several eggs per nest. So like this is like, and as we said before, like the Prairie Pothole region is a really important nesting area. So like this is a really, I don't want to overstate it because I don't have the data, but this has the potential to be like a serious conservation issue, you would think. So is
Yeah.
there any like ideas for like ways in the long term that we can create safe nesting places for ducks or anything like that?
Well, yeah, and on your point, I mean, I think the studies in this, so we live in the heart of the Prairie Pothole region essentially, but it's a region that extends all the way up into North Dakota and Canada. But I think 60 to 80% of the whole country's breeding population of waterfowl comes here to nest. And specifically, they love this region because there's so much water here. But yeah, and then in each field, I mean, if it's a good field with water and stuff around, we've had farmers tell us there might be 20 to 30 nests in one field. And you got to figure each nest has maybe like 8 to 10 eggs on average, sometimes 10 to 12 depending on the species. So that's potentially hundreds of birds in one field getting just disked under before they even get a chance to hatch. So, yeah, anything we can do in this region really impacts the waterfowl populations across the whole country. And the farming, like, there's almost nothing you can do about it, hardly, because, I mean, you can give them all these public areas to nest on, protected areas, but, I mean, ducks are just going to go wherever they want to go, essentially. And, I mean, the hens will return for years and years back to the same couple fields or same immediate area that they were born in and their mothers before them and that kind of thing. So as that turns to farmland, they just keep returning back to that area. Yeah, there's almost nothing you could do that I could think of that would really encourage them to nest somewhere else. So you almost just have to kind of make the best of it. I mean, if the egg salvage thing can work, that would be essentially the solution. But the tiling in our area, that's draining all the little wetlands that the birds love to nest by, and it consolidates them to like these bigger lakes and stuff, which birds do not want to nest around big lakes. They really need those little teeny tiny seasonal potholes that are in the middle of farm fields, which farmers don't like because then they can't farm them. So, they're tiling them, draining them, and then that in turn kind of makes poor nesting habitat for these birds. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a number of problems, but I think kind of just starting where we can is really the only solution.
Yeah, well, it's better than doing nothing, that's for sure.
Yeah, hopefully I would love to see it work and be able to kind of spread and, then it doesn't create an issue for farmers and that kind of thing. But
Yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything else you want to talk about? I know you do like art commissions and stuff. Do you want to plug anything like that before we wrap this up?
I guess mainly it would be great if anyone's willing to donate. I mean, this is all privately funded. Obviously, building pens, raising birds, all that costs money. The incubators, time, all of that. And there's a way on my website to go and donate. I'm a 501c3 nonprofit, so any donations are tax deductible. Yeah, that would be the biggest help. But yeah, if anyone's interested in my artwork, my art website is madisongrimmart.com, and I need to update it, but there's some of my past art on there, and then yeah, I can do commissions of anything pretty much, and paintings, drawings, all that kind of thing.
And then the Second Chance has its own website as well.
Yep, secondchanceflight.com. And the documentary's right on there. There's another video I did with my dad actually before the documentary came out. And then there's some pictures and all sorts of stuff. Kind of a good overview.
Yep. And Second Chance Flight on Instagram as well too, right?
Yep. I have an Instagram page and then also a Facebook page too. And I try and post updates on there regularly. Obviously in the spring when I have a lot of ducklings, it's more often.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been really cool. Do you have like any long-term plans as far as like career or anything to go into wildlife biology, wildlife rehab, anything like that?
Has always kind of been my career, at least until now. I would love to kind of do this nonprofit thing with Second Chance Flight and make that kind of into a career. If it can grow enough, be successful enough. I mean, essentially it is wildlife rehabilitation and then yeah, the biology aspect. I always wanted to be like a waterfowl biologist or a vet. Those are my two toss-up ideas. But yeah, I would love to. I think that would be really cool, but I don't know. I'm kind of already doing the waterfowl biology work without a degree, kind of, I feel like. So,
Yeah, it's a little bit of an unconventional route, but it still works, right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, well, I mean, I think it's great, especially as young as you are, that you're figuring these kind of things out and making this impact, because we need young people who care about this stuff if it's going to right now we're kind of in good old days as far as wildlife is concerned in this country, and there are a lot of
Mhm.
things that are concerning me that make me think that people are taking this for granted, and it concerns me. So we need young people like you who understand that and who are working as hard as the people before us to make sure that these resources are great for future generations.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope we can inspire other young people to want to go outside and go hunting and just be around nature.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, um, follow Second Chance Flight on social media. You said secondchanceflight.com, madisongrimart.com. Follow The Ground Between Us on Instagram, on TikTok, blah, 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 Facebook. Um, Thanks everybody for listening.